This is your captain speaking. Welcome to Service Techniques. My name is Jacob Larson. I am the restaurant and beverage manager for the hotel at Kirkwood Center. The book, as well as your class experience in the clinical environment, is going to be based around best practices for the serving world, both in the restaurant and banquets. The book, as well as my clinical portion of this class, are going to focus mainly on restaurant service, and then the banquet modules that you'll be involved in later on are going to focus on banquet style service, which is truly the other half of the service world. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and dive into chapters 1 and 2 today from the Professional Server book. And chapter 1 is duly noted, the Professional Server. So what is a professional server? First, I want you to reflect on the best service experience you've ever had and what set it apart from the rest. So this doesn't have to be somewhere fine dining. It could just be any time that you experienced service that went above and beyond your expectations and made you want to come back, or you told your family and friends about it, or you just left astounded, wanting more. So where did that happen? What did the service staff do to make you feel that way? And then, of course, the goal of the class is to, how can you portray that onto guests that you come in contact with in the future? So maybe some things that come to mind would be the demeanor of the person that served you, how friendly they are. Product knowledge, so being able to answer questions over both the food and beverage menus when you had them, or maybe they were suggesting things over the menu that you thought you were intriguing, or maybe you wouldn't have tried in the first place, but they were able to convince you. Being attentive to your needs, of course, making sure the water is always filled at the table, clearing appropriate courseware. But overall, this person's probably invested in your satisfaction. Right? So the book defines this as an individual who is more than an order taker. They are a salesperson who can increase their personal income, so through tips, as well as the revenue of the establishment, which is why we're all here. At the end of the day, the restaurant is a business and it needs to make money. So they're going to do this by increasing the food and beverage sales with each guest. All right? So yes, the top half of the slide here, the person needs to be friendly and attentive and know their stuff, but at the end of the day, you are a salesperson. There's a menu, and you're there to interact with the guest. It's a business exchange. They will come in expecting to spend money, and it's your job to get them to spend that money in the best possible way, so that they continue to come back and spend their money with you. So, income opportunities, hourly wages. All right, for any of you that have served in the past, you generally know that the service base wage is low. So there's this thing called the federal tipped wage credit. The federal minimum wage right now, again, we're talking about the federal government at the national level, $7.25 an hour. They are willing to give restaurants a tip credit of $5.12. That doesn't mean that the restaurant is raking that in. It just means that they're taking that off of the normally required minimum wage, because it's a tipped position, such as a server. So they say that restaurants at a bare minimum can pay their service staff who are receiving tips $2.13 an hour, which is very, very low, right? So many states offer a reduced tip credit, which results in a higher hourly wage for servers. So here in Iowa, the tipped wage is $4.35 an hour. So that is the minimum that a business can pay you as a server. Again, it's the minimum. They can pay more. Many mom and pop shops probably don't, but then again, it always depends on where you're working. So some corporate places like here, or the Marriott or Hilton, those types of places, they may pay their servers a higher hourly rate, and that is completely up to them to decide. Okay, so hourly wages, obviously not getting you very far on your financial budgeting for the month. So tips, this is the reason why you're here. It's left by individual diners in the form of credit card tips, cash, room charges, anything that is of monetary value, okay? Auto gratuities, kind of the third thing here. So usually associated with large parties or special services, and the terminology that's most commonly used, or that's legally used, is a service fee. So there might be a 20% service fee for parties of 7 or more, or 6 or more, or whatever the in-house policy is for that. And that's technically owned by the business. It's it's a nonverbal contract between the party, the guest that's coming in, acknowledging that they're bringing in a large group of people, and the business saying, well, we're going to tack this on anyway. Tips, so the middle line here, those by law go directly to the server unless they're tip pooling, which we'll talk about later. Auto gratuities or service fees, which is the legal term, are technically owned by the business, and then the business decides if they want to turn that into a gratuity for the servers. So here at the Class Act, we do have a service fee, a 20% service fee for groups of 7 or more. It's up to the server to decide if they want to assign that to a table or not. But if they do, they will see all of that money. The Class Act and the hotel does not keep any of that service fee or that auto service fee, for ourselves. It all goes back to the server that was serving the party, or multiple servers. But that's something, if you go and work somewhere and you're working a large party and you take 20% and you're expecting $100 off of that, and the business says, oh, no, we're going to keep 20, that's a conversation that needs to be had with the business. All right, so how are you going to get a raise? Well, again, in most places, it's going to be tips. So maybe you're green to the industry. Again, green meaning that you are new. Or maybe you're just starting at a new restaurant. You don't know the menu that well yet, and you're working on that, and you're working on your service techniques and, learning the clientele base. Maybe your tip average is around like 15, 18%. Well, the longer you're there, the better you know your menu, and the longer you're doing this, the better you're going to get, the better service you can provide for the guests. So now your tip average starts increasing to 18, 20, maybe 22%, 25 if you're having a really good night. So that is the most realistic way that you are going to receive a wage increase, or a raise increase in the industry. That said, again, going somewhere more corporate, like here at the Class Act, or bigger hotel chains and restaurant chains, they may have programs in place based on tenure. So someone that is, has been serving for a year or more, they get a yearly raise or a quarterly raise of 25 cents, 50 cents, and then your base wage, rather than being the $4.35 an hour, does increase. So that is another way to get a raise. But in general, tips. So tip pooling and tipping out. Okay, tip pooling. This is when all the tips go into one pot and are divided based on hours worked, position, tenure, or a mix of criteria. This is not legally allowed in all areas. As of 2018, it is allowed on a national level, but it is up to the states to decide how they want to run this, and what the verbiage is from the business to the employees. Overall, this needs to be very transparent. So what this looks like is, all the servers in the front of house, they pool their tips at the end of the night, and then a certain cut goes to the bus people. A certain part may be going to the expo. Some of them some money's going to the back servers, and then the rest of it goes to the front servers, or the bartenders get some based on, drink sales through the evening. That is what tip pooling looks like, okay? So that is different than the servers just keeping what they get from the guests. A tip out, a little bit different. This is when, maybe you have a large party in house, like a 20 top, and 2 or 3 service staff are going to take that, but one server rings everything in under their number for simplicity's sake, and then they get that 20% service fee. A tip out is when that server then says, okay, well, I'm going to split my tip equally with person B and person C because they helped me out that night. So we're each going to split that gratuity evenly. That is a tip out. So it's kind of like a one-time special occasion thing. Tip pooling would be if it's an ongoing practice of the business, so that all tipped positions are getting a little piece of the pie. So are tips mandatory? The answer here is no, okay, unless it's one of those auto gratuities that we were talking about. But solo diners coming in, groups of 2s, 4s, they do not have to tip you, okay? So when stiff, we need to evaluate why that happened. It could be because of poor service, back of house errors, or patrons just don't believe in the tipping, which is more and more frequent these days, but specifically some things that we see here at the Class Act and the hotel. We see a lot of foreign travelers coming from places where tipping just isn't a part of their culture. So it's not always intentional, or it's not always realized by the guest, depending on who you're serving, that they should be tipping you. Okay, so let's circle back here. Poor service. We would hope that, in the process of the dining experience, that the guest would identify that they're not having a good time, or that you would be checking on them, the 2-bite check, going back, how's everything tasting, may I get you anything else, and you see that something's overcooked or undercooked, or they haven't touched it, and you're intervening. At that point, it's a critical point in the meal, and you're trying to rectify something. So that's the overall goal, and then you're on top of your service game, and hopefully we recover. Back of house errors, again, that could be just something came out wrong, or doesn't taste right, or it's oversalted, whatever it could be. Again, the whole point of the professional server and professional service would be trying to catch these errors before they leave, so that we either know why they're not tipping, or we've rectified it so that they continue to tip you. Because most of the times when we identify an issue and it's solved, the guest will leave a gratuity because they're happy and appreciative that the issue is fixed. So the point of this is that yes, it could be because of poor service, but then we need to reflect on why we were unable to deliver proper service to that guest in the first place, okay? At the end of the day, though, if we can't figure out why, and we couldn't intervene, or we did intervene, we fixed it, and they still stiffed you anyway, should you dwell on this all night? Absolutely not. You need to get over it and focus on the other guests in the restaurant, because if you take your bad attitude to the other tables, they're going to see that, you're going to be distracted, and now you're providing those other guests with poor service as well, and this non-tipping thing or a low tip average is just going to snowball throughout the night. So yes, it sucks, it's not fun, it does happen. You don't always have an opportunity to ask the guest, or try to improve the guest experience throughout. Move on with a positive attitude with the other guests in your section. Okay, the IRS, Internal Revenue Service. We've all had to file taxes at one point or another. I'm going to make that assumption right now. But if you're in a serving role, you're probably getting cash tips. So the pro tip number one is to report your cash tips. Okay, a lot of people will take their cash tips home at night, and that's fine. You can do that, but you need to keep a log of how many cash tips you're getting, and report that through either your employer per pay period, or you need to keep that log through the end of the tax year and report it to the IRS, which also means that you need to be saving a portion of those cash tips so you can pay the balance when your TurboTax says you owe money, because it will if you haven't been claiming those all year. So billions in gratuity are unreported annually. That is just a fact of the industry, and of course the government does everything in their power to try to crack down on that, but ultimately the responsibility to report your cash tips falls back on you, the server, not the business. So potential penalties for underreporting or no declaration would be going to prison, additional taxes, FICA, either 7% of unreported income or 50% on the total FICA liability for the year. FICA, of course, being the Medicare and Social Security coming out of your paycheck. That's something that comes out of everyone's paycheck by law, so you'll see that on there. If you don't believe me, go look at one of your pay stubs. 20% penalty on total tax liability for the year. That's a big one. Interest charges, fat headache. You could also maybe be fired from your job. That one's not listed, but if you're not reporting, you're not being fiscally responsible with yourself, the business may think that you're being negligent with their finances as well. So things you just don't want to do. Quick story, there was an associate of one of my previous bosses that was a bartender in Chicago, and worked downtown at a bar, made a lot of cash tips, made about $80,000 in cash tips one year, and went out and bought a new BMW sports car. All fun and games until the IRS audited him and said, well, this is weird. Your employer says that you made, $28,000 on their payroll, yet you just bought this brand new car worth the same amount. So how did that happen? Got in a lot of trouble, had to pay a lot of money back to the government. Just a situation that you do not want to put yourself into. So report your cash tips. Charge tips, so credit cards and room charges, if you're in the hotel industry, those usually get posted to your paycheck. And so those are reported by the business, so you don't have to worry about those. Okay, factors that are going to affect your income. Number of hours worked, right? The more you work, generally the more opportunities you have to serve guests, so the more money you can make, and vice versa. It's a busy week, you're going to reduce the amount of hours you want to work if you're part-time. Fewer opportunities to serve guests, so your tips go down. Working at more than one establishment, different service periods, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Okay, so there might be some stereotypes or biases against certain service periods here, but you have to just remember that not every restaurant is the same. So here at the Class Act, breakfast is really heavily dependent on rooms sold in the tower, meaning how many people are in house. So Monday through Friday, we're not a Perkins or Village Inn or IHOP, so we're not the hottest spot in town to come get breakfast. So that's generally slow. That said, though, Perkins, Village Inn, IHOP, Riley's Cafe here in Cedar Rapids. These are all breakfast locations, or Bluebird Diner in North Liberty and Iowa City. That's a place where you would want to be a breakfast server. It's turn and burn. You get the guests in, you get them out. It's quick food, quick ticket times. The ticket average is low, but you're serving more people. So it's, just as lucrative as a slower but higher ticket average dinner service. Lunch, same things. Working at a restaurant that's near, a business sector would be very lucrative. People come down, they have 30, 45 minutes, maybe an hour for lunch. You get a lot of people in the door, a lot of people out. You're making a lot of money. Dinner, again, excuse me. Again, usually a little bit slower, but the ticket average is higher. People like to spend money at dinner, so rather than having a $20 lunch check, you're maybe looking at $40 to $50 per person at dinner. So the ticket average is up there, and your 20% average gratuity will reflect that. Weekday, weekend. Once again, stereotypically, Mondays, Tuesdays are the slowest days for the restaurant industry, whereas the weekends are going to be busiest. Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday brunch, that's a big one. But, here in the hotel environment, Monday and Tuesday nights are actually some of our busiest nights and days during the week because we have all the business travelers flying in and getting ready for their weekly conferences. So it really does just depend on what kind of establishment you're looking for, or working for, I should say. Holidays. All right. Generally, you're either going to be closed or you're going to be open and very busy. I've worked in both types of establishments, and of course being closed for the holidays is nice because you get to spend that with friends and family. But being open, like we are here at the Class Act for, Christmas Eve, Thanksgiving, Easter, Mother's Day, like all the heavy-hitting holidays that most other places are closed for, we are very busy, and servers make out very well with their tips because there aren't a lot of other options open in town. So everyone that wants to come out or doesn't want to cook, or maybe they're traveling, they'll come to our establishment and are usually extra generous with the gratuity as they realize our service staff are working. So you kind of need to figure out, what do you value as a server? Would you rather have that time off and work for somewhere that's closed, or would you rather work somewhere that's open on those and, figure out a different day to have that holiday with your friends and family and make bank? Weather. All right. Think about establishments that have a lot of open seating, such as patios or rooftop bars, stuff like that. You're hired on seasonally as a patio server for a local restaurant, and a thunderstorm rolls through. Well, they probably don't need you anymore that day, so you're going to be cut, and you're losing an opportunity to serve those guests. So same thing, in the winter, it's cold. Generally, if the weather's really bad, guests won't wander out, which could negatively impact your earnings. Okay, 3 variables that impact earnings. Here you go. Desire to serve. Genuinely and sincerely wanting to create a pleasant experience for your guests. You all have that. That's why you're in the hospitality program. So you can just put a giant old green check mark on that one. Personalized service. Consistently creating and delivering a distinctively personalized service to increase tip percentages. This is one thing that we really try to do here, at a AAA 4-diamond hotel, which the hotel at Kirkwood is, and we're part of the lifestyle brand of the preferred hotels and resorts. Both of those rating systems put a lot of pressure on personalized service. So getting to know the guest's name and not just, being a robot and saying, good morning and have a nice day, and that's all the interaction you have. We want to try to get to know the guest a little bit, what they like, what they don't like. Again, using their name whenever we can. So consistently creating and delivering, distinctly personalized service. Marketing skills. This one comes with time as you absorb, the amount of product that you're able to sell at your establishment. So suggestively selling items such as appetizers, beverages, and desserts. So we're really just talking about menu knowledge here, getting to know your menu, so that when guests come in and say, well, I'm not really in the mood for this, but I was kind of looking for this, rather than saying, oh, I don't know if we can do that, or I don't know if we have that, you can be confident saying, absolutely, let me point you to this on the menu, I think you're really going to enjoy that, and this glass of wine is going to pair well with that. Now you're really utilizing those marketing skills, okay? It doesn't have to just be, restaurant related either. It could be like, in the hotel environment, people come in, I'm looking for a workout facility. Okay, great. I know my building. I know the workout facility is on the second floor, so you can guide the guest there. That is tying into the overall service experience of the guest. So again, those things: desire to serve, personalized service, and marketing skills. So some selling techniques for you. Suggestive selling, which is guiding the guest experience. Upselling, increasing the value of the guest experience, talking about the monetary value, okay? We're going to pause here for a second. So suggestive selling, again, guiding the guest experience. This is not money driven. So this is someone coming in and, they say, well, no, you say, what are you looking for on the menu tonight? Welcome to the class act, whatever. Here are a couple of my favorite things. They say, well, I'm not really looking for anything too heavy. I haven't had, chicken in a while. And you say, perfect, I have this great chicken dish right here. It has, X, Y, and Z. The company needs it. It sells very well. That's suggestive selling, okay? Because you're listening to what they asked for and you're guiding them to that item on the menu. Upselling is different. Upselling is usually strictly money driven, with little to no regard for what the guest is really trying to tell you. So they come in, they say, well, I'm not really hungry, I'm looking for something light. And you say, well, how about this 16-ounce tomahawk steak? Okay, you're not listening to the guest, but because you're telling them to order something that is very heavy and probably very expensive, right? It's probably like $50-$60. So you're not listening and you're only thinking about how to increase the guest check. So there's a gray area in between these two, and that's kind of what you aim for some of the time, because it's not incorrect to upsell. Sometimes guests may be telling you that they are here to spend a little bit of money, or they're here to celebrate or something, and they don't get out very often, so they're looking for you to help guide to some of the nicer things on the menu. That's okay, but what you want to avoid is just going in cold and very blatantly only pointing out the most expensive things on the menu to try to increase your tip. That's wrong. Guests see through it, and they won't come back to your restaurant. I guarantee it. And if you think about it, you've probably witnessed this firsthand at some restaurants. People just coming in, and it could be as simple as, I see you ordered the steak. Do you want to add, sautéed mushrooms and onions for $5? That's an upsell. They're not suggestively selling anything like, oh, what my favorite thing is I love adding mushrooms and onions. We could do that for you if you'd like. That's more of a suggestive sell. Just going in cold and offering things with price tags. That's upselling. So anyway, highlighting, this is going in and telling people what your favorite things on the menu are, what the best sellers are, daily specials. That's highlighting. We want to always do that at the beginning when we're introducing ourselves to the guests. And then last but not least, asking open-ended questions. So an open-ended question here: what type of wine do you drink at home? That's open-ended. The guest has to conversate with you. Closed is, do you enjoy red wine? They're going to say yes or no, and now you're forced to continue asking questions. Whereas the first one, they're going to tell you what kind of wine they drink at home, and then you can use your marketing skills and your menu knowledge to then suggest something that they would enjoy that's on your list. All right, well, I think I already kind of went over this a little bit. So put yourself in the shoes of the guest. What would you prefer, right? So the Class Act, if you're a server with us, it's expected that our staff finds ways to personalize service for each guest, and we do that via suggestive selling, okay? So again, the upsell, oh, Bombay Martini, would you like to try or upgrade to Junipero Gin for $2 more? That's an upsell. Suggestively selling, oh, I'm a gin fanatic myself. We actually just received a new product the other day that's comparable to Bombay, Monkey 47. Have you had the opportunity to try it? Starts a conversation with the guest. Yes, it probably does cost a little bit more, but it's about this conversation, and you're suggesting something that they maybe haven't had that's going to get them in, it's going to lure them in, and now they want to try to buy it. All right, so some occupational disadvantages. Working nights, weekends, and holidays. Yes, your social life is going to take a hit. If you're already working in the industry, anywhere, front of house, back of house, front desk, you already know this. We're open, we party when we don't party. We work when other people party. That's just part of the job. Stress. The job is physically, mentally, psychologically, and emotionally demanding. It's a fast-paced environment, okay? You have to lift a lot of things, you're carrying a lot of things, you have to carry on a lot of conversations with a lot of different people that you don't know. That can be wearing, for sure. Minimal benefits, again, and unless you're working in a corporate environment where they do have benefits, most mom and pop shops aren't going to be offering you any medical, retirement, dental, vision, paid time off, those types of things. Minimum wage, as we discussed in one of the first slides, it's very low, okay? We're talking about the base wage, not your tipped wage. The base wage, $4.35 an hour, or working in some of the states that don't have it higher, $2.13 an hour. It's very, very low. So that can lead into difficulties with financial budgeting, right? Because there are ups and downs in the industry. And lost income due to circumstances outside of your control. Could be weather, could be maybe you're working for kind of a sketchy establishment and the health department comes in and they say, yeah, you're not up to spec, you got to close for a couple weeks and figure this out. Okay, well now you as a server, it's not your fault, but you're out of income until it reopens. Stuff like that. Advantages. Wow, look at how much longer that list is. I wanted to hit you with the negative first, then we'll go to the positive. So time flexibility, right? Restaurants are open, you could say 24 hours a day, depending on wherever you work, but generally, the span between breakfast and dinner is like 17, 18 hours. So somewhere in there, people can find a balance between their life obligations and finding time to work, right? Generally, so you have conflicts in the morning, so maybe you're looking to be serving lunch or dinner somewhere, or your conflicts are at night, so you want to find somewhere that we can work in the morning and lunch. Income flexibility, again, kind of scaling that time flexibility into income flexibility. You can work more, you could work less, you could focus on working at places with higher ticket averages. Performance reviews, not only talking about your direct boss or supervisor giving you performance reviews, which they should, but more specifically talking about the guests that are right there in front of you, and you're going to know at the end of the experience or even throughout it if they're having a good time or if they're not, or things that you can improve on. So you're constantly getting feedback. High hourly wage. Well, wait a minute, Jacob. Didn't you just say it's a low hourly wage? Well, I did. But taking tips into consideration, the national average hourly rate for servers with tips included is between $12 and $22 an hour. So that is not bad, all things considered, which is why the government does give that tip credit to businesses. Job mobility. In general, food service is everywhere. Not only here in the United States, but all over the world. So if you have any semblance of knowledge of serving skills or cooking skills, you could probably find a job. Places always seem to be hiring. Clothing expense. Generally minimal, because you're either provided a uniform or you can find 2 to 3 sets of clothes that you're going to rotate in and out. and just kind of keep those in your back pocket, so you don't really have to think about what you're wearing to work every day. Complimentary or discounted meals. Most places will offer either a comped meal for you if you work a certain hour shift, or discounted, or sometimes they'll provide a family meal, so the chefs are throwing together whatever's about to go bad, and they serve that for free. After work stress, again, yes, we talked about on the previous slide, at work stress can be high because of the fast-paced environment. But in general, in a serving role or bartending role, you're not really responsible for any paperwork or emails afterwards. So as soon as you clock out, you can go and relax. Physical fitness, there's lots of moving around in this industry, lots of walking very quickly to tables and bussing tables and lifting things and stuff like that. I would encourage you, though you should not have your phone out on the floor, but either get like a Fitbit or something in your clinical experience and see how many steps you actually do take and see what that equates to for miles. You might be surprised at how far you walk in a shift. You get to meet interesting guests, not only in the restaurant, but specifically at the bar. We do get to meet a lot of interesting people because you get to have more one-on-one time with them. So that can be fun, learning about their lifestyle and their careers and all that kind of stuff. Entrepreneurial experience. So, as the very first slide stated, you are a salesman. So you'll get to experiment with what kind of sales techniques work best with you, which are well received with the guests, and how you can use those to increase the value of the guest check and vis-a-vis your gratuity. Work unity. Most places, especially I've worked, the front of house and back of house families seem to be pretty tight-knit. They're not only people that you work with, but they end up being people that you also hang out with, so that can be a positive thing. Sales training, again, kind of goes with entrepreneurial experience, getting to learn how to sell things to the guests, specials and the soups of the day and stuff like that. And of course, teamwork participation. So it is a team, it's a giant team, and depending on how large or complicated of a restaurant you work in, the team may have different components in it. For example, you might not just be a server in your own section, you might be working with a back server or a sommelier or a bus person. So learning to not be a lone wolf and really use the other people on the team to your advantage to make sure the guest experience is stellar. Okay, so job qualifications. Education. Formal training, that is not always needed. It's better to be a quick study. You're getting the education right now, though, above and beyond what most places are going to offer. Intelligence, you need to be alert and mentally sharp. How well do you handle situations under pressure? Something a little self-reflection there, because there will be times where you'll be under pressure, and in the weeds is what we call that. Product knowledge, must understand menus and descriptions so you can relay that to the guests. Service knowledge, that's a majority of what this class is, applying serving techniques and standards while maintaining a personalized style. Again, we do not want to turn into robots for the table. It's another thing. Just like upselling, guests see through that. Guests will also see through people that just do not have personalized style and are saying the exact same thing to every single table. Timing and attention to details. You'll never know which detail is most important to the guest, which is why we have to pay attention to them all. And what I mean by that is sometimes, think about yourself when you go out and what details you're looking at. But you have a guest, you're taking them to the table, and you pull out the chair, and the chair is dirty. Now for me, I've been in the industry, that wouldn't necessarily bother me that much because I kind of get it. But for some people, that would be absolutely disgusting. And, they're thinking right away, if the chair is this dirty, what else in the restaurant is this dirty, right? So you just never know, which is why you have to pay attention to every single little detail. All right, so some more qualifications. Personality, you need to be pleasant and truly enjoy people. You must be able to sustain a friendly demeanor with self-confidence while under pressure. Initiative, sense of urgency and reading the need. Sense of urgency, you can't stress that one enough. There's always something to do. All right, some other ones: having a good positive attitude, teamwork ability, good manners, professional appearance, which we'll talk about in Chapter 2. Honesty, this may be my number one out of all these qualifications. Honesty is so important in this industry, not only with working with other coworkers, but also with the guests, especially when things go wrong. Guests have a sixth sense regarding BS that servers and managers feed them when something's going wrong and it's affecting the experience. The best thing that you can do is to be honest with the guest all the time. Something's going wrong, tell them why. Was it your mistake? Did you forget to ring something in? Tell them you forgot to ring something in. Did their steak overcook and it needs to be dropped again? Tell them that. Tell them that there was an issue and that you value sending them the correct product, so they're working on it. Don't try to cover something up with lies and saying, oh, the kitchen forgot the ticket, or yeah, it's just really busy, when clearly there are only like three or four other tables in the restaurant. So honesty truly is the best policy, and people will be more forgiving of you if you practice that. Sense of humor, we got to read the need on this one. If guests are joking around with you, it's okay to mirror that, when it's appropriate, of course. They're joking around. They probably want you to joke around. If they're joking around with you and you're a little rigid and being a little dense, then you're not enhancing their guest experience. But if they're joking around and you can kind of joke around with them, they're probably going to enjoy that interaction, which is why they started it in the first place. What I would avoid doing is, starting to joke around with a table without being prompted first. That's not always appropriate. And of course, if their sense of humor is inappropriate or offensive, that's not something you want to engage in. But don't be afraid to kind of like let down your standard server guard if they're just having a good time. Diversity skills, knowing how to handle different types of guests, usually regarding dietary restrictions here. So if someone's like halal, or they're gluten-free or the different degrees of gluten-free. So just, is it a preference, or are they actually like celiac? How can we, offer kosher products? That kind of stuff. That's what we're talking about. And then reliability. I guess probably for most people, reliability would be number one. So actually showing up to your shifts, very important. When scheduled. I'll put that little asterisk in there. Showing up when scheduled. Okay, on to chapter 2, professional appearance. So what does your appearance reveal? Personality and attitude. Remember, the restaurant floor is a stage. You need to look the part. For any of you theater kids from back in the day in high school or other college experiences, welcome back. The restaurant industry is no different. It is a constant act and a circus that's going on. Sanitation. What do your looks reveal about the overall cleanliness of the establishment? I think I touched on this a couple slides ago, but just again, remember, if you look dirty, the guest is going to be wondering, like, what else in the restaurant could be dirty, unkempt, or unsanitary. So you represent the restaurant. That's your goal as a server. You are the liaison between the guest and the kitchen, so you need to look like someone that they would want to talk to and be served from. So your appearance is your way of telling your guests how you value yourself. So grooming standards. Here we go. Guests expect to see well-groomed service staff. They feel comfortable and confident in returning to the establishment. Just makes sense. So bathing in deodorants. I'm going to steal the Nike slogan here. Just do it, please. Hair care needs to be well-controlled, clean, natural hair colors. Fragrances, they may be worn in moderation, but should not overwhelm the smell of the food. I'll summarize that, right? So you walk by, you're there to eat, you're there to smell the food and smell the things coming out of the kitchen and enjoy that. And if someone's, Chanel or Armani from your service staff is overpowering that, that's not necessarily the reason that you came to the restaurant. So you obviously don't want to smell foul, which is why we're using deodorant and moderate amounts of fragrances, but don't cover yourself in perfume or cologne, please. Beards need to be well trimmed or clean shaven. What we want to try to avoid is the awkward in between where it's kind of like stubbly. That's not what we're going to do. So teeth and breath, brush and use mints, that's fine. No gum, that's both a back of house and front of house rule. Could end up in the food, and it's just tacky in general. So hands and fingernails need to be clean and sanitized. Guests will see any blemishes when you set down their food and beverages. The fingernail or the nail polish rule here at the hotel, front of house can wear clear or neutral colored nail polishes as long as they're well kept. Anytime you're in a back of house situation, you're not allowed to wear anything because that is a health code thing. We don't want that ending up in the food. Jewelry needs to be plain and simple. No hoop earrings. You need to reflect a conservative image. Okay. Body language and posture. Yeah, so your body language and posture conveys positive or negative impressions to the guest. You generally, well, you just need to be very aware of what you look like, because it's easy for guests to read your willingness to serve them, right? So here are some examples of some positive things. So smiling, keeping your arms to the side, keeping your back straight, leaning into the conversation a little bit, talking with your hands, not exaggeratedly, but enough that you look engaged, making eye contact, and affirmative movements like nodding. Things you want to avoid: neutral or frowning facial expressions, slouching, hands in your pockets, crossed arms, stiff or rigid posture, so that you're not moving around, a lot. You're just kind of like standing there. We don't want that. Looking around, so not making eye contact with the guest or seeming uninterested, and clenched fists. These are all examples of things that you would just not want to do tableside, because it conveys to the guest that you do not want to be there. All right, and uniforms. So career servers should have enough uniforms for daily changes. So again, a career server is like, this is your full-time job. So full-time servers should have a minimum of 3 uniforms in rotation. So, 1 to wear, 1 for backup, 1 in the wash. Shoes should always be slip resistant. Okay, can't emphasize that one enough. Just because we're not in a back-of-house environment does not mean that we are isolated from spills and breakage. Things spill and break all the time on the floor, and so you need to make sure that you have those slip-resistant shoes. I know they don't always look the fanciest, but it is important for your safety. We move fast, as we've kind of talked about before. There's a sense of urgency at all times. When you're busy, you're moving around, you're going to be walking through puddles, so slip-resistant shoes, please. So what should you wear if the establishment does not require a uniform? Well, to an extent, this is up to you, but something conservative would be good. Generally, black slacks, a white shirt or a black shirt, something that's non-printed. Again, the slip-resistant shoes. That would all be appropriate. We could really just sum this up and say something business casual, right? Business casual would be appropriate. There it is. Something to project a professional image. Business casual. Okay, that is the end of chapters 1 and 2. So there will be a quiz, 10-question quiz over both of these chapters combined. So not 20 questions, just 10 questions over chapters 1 and 2. Thanks for tuning in. Next we'll go on to 3 and 4.